One night driving home from work after a graveyard shift, I got a sudden urge to pee. Like, it was really bad. Painfully bad. I was driving down a quiet parkway with no other cars, so I figured I'd pull to the side real quick and pee in the woods. I put my hazards on just in case that off chance that a cop rolled by. After I finished, I got back in my truck and tried to start it. Instead, all I heard was the sickening sound of a car battery failing to start the engine. I tried at least 5 times before I gave up, not wanting to drain the battery anymore. I left my hazards on and stepped outside so I could be ready to wave someone down in hopes that they had jumper cables. When I did see headlights coming down the road, I went to the side of the road and started waving my arms. The car slowed down and went to pull over to the side behind my truck. As I started walking over to the car, the 2 front doors opened and 2 relatively big guys stepped out. I stopped in my tracks and thanked them for stopping, immediately asking if they had jumper cables. They looked at each other, then back at me, and the driver said, "Nah." The other guy asked, "You stuck?" I said, "Yeah, my battery died." The driver said to give him a sec, he'd call one of his boys. I didn't exactly know how I felt about that. Right away, I found the 2 a little off-putting. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I got gangster kind of vibes from them. The driver got back into his car after he got on the phone. I did the same. When I was sitting in my car, I couldn't help but feel I needed to call for my own help. I didn't know how much I trusted these 2. So I called my brother's phone a couple of times before he picked up. It was past midnight after all. I had woken him up with my call, but I told him I was stuck in an emergency and needed his help. I told him to bring jumper cables and to hurry up. He said he'd be over in a few. When I hung up, I got out from the car and waved my arms out to the car behind me. The driver opened his door and stepped out to look at me, and I called over that I had help on the way and it was cool. All he said was, "Aight then," and got back in his car. That feeling of danger suddenly exited my body, and I felt at ease. I leaned my seat back so I could relax in the meantime, but soon it came to me that I didn't hear their car pass by. I turned back and saw that their car was still there. It had been almost 5 minutes since I'd waved them off. I called my brother again, who said he just got in the car. I told him to floor it to me and have some weapons ready, because I was pretty sure I was about to be jumped. He said he had his baseball bat in the back seat as usual. Luckily, my truck was only about 5 minutes from our house, less if he stepped on it. I started to beat myself up for not just holding it in for another 5 minutes, then this wouldn't have happened. Finally, more headlights appeared coming up the parkway. The approaching car slowed and pulled up behind the car that was behind me. I got out from the car and started waving my arms again. But when I saw 2 of the car doors open, I had a feeling it wasn't my brother. The driver in the first car got out and greeted his apparent goons. They all started gradually making their way over to my truck as they talked loud and cursed at each other. I guess it's worth noting there were no jumper cables in any of their hands. I'm not a lucky person at all, but when I saw the familiar headlights of my brother's Mustang zooming down the parkway towards us, I felt as if my luck had turned around for once. He pulled up his car in front of my truck and he came out with his baseball bat. He pulled out another baseball bat from the back seat that he brought for me. He tossed it to me, and my brother, being the larger, more dominant one, said in a very loud, firm voice, we didn't want trouble and it's best they moved along and let us go about our business. They all backed up a little when they saw our bats. One of the guys laughed, another one said, "We ain't ever said we want no trouble." Upon examining the first car, I realized the guy who was in the passenger seat originally wasn't there anymore. I whispered to my brother to be wary, one of the men were missing. My brother got back in his car to bring his hood up in front of my hood. He fetched his cables and connected them to my battery. I kept watch of the 3 men who were lurking by their cars. Now we waited. My brother very softly called my name, and then low-key tilted his head in the direction of the woods. I looked into the woods, and saw the man who was originally in the passenger seat and was now hiding in the woods, looking as if he was about to do some kind of sneak-up attack. My brother told me to try the ignition. So, with one faithful turn of the key, the engine to my truck started. I got back out of the truck to literally guard my brother as he unplugged the cords from my battery and put them back in his car. We whispered to each other our plan, and that was for him to throw it in reverse as soon as we got in our cars, and I'd step on it back onto the road. After closing our hoods, we took one last look at the men huddled by the third car, looking at us. Then we ran for our respective vehicles and stepped on the gas. My brother floored it in reverse. I waited to give him enough space before I floored it as well. As I did, I heard the shattering of my back windshield as a brick landed on my dash. Then I heard the distinct sounds of gunshots, which continued to shatter the remainder of my back windshield. I ducked down as low as I could get while still getting a view of the road. The two of us managed to flee the scene unharmed, and they didn't chase us. We went straight home to tell our 65-year-old dad, who claimed he was 100% sure we just had an encounter with a local gang. Our dad also told us not to take that specific parkway at night because it's not a safe road. I can only guess they wanted to rob me blind, and they didn't take too kindly to us waving bats in their faces.